Meet again today for Revelation Reflections. We are on Revelation chapter 13. Now you will recall that we came to the point that AntiChrist and a false prophet were rising up. This is the context of Revelation chapter 13. So let's look at it. What will there be? What will the effect be? What would be the political terrain from which this Antichrist is rising up? Can we make some predictions? How far has the Antichrist process got entrenched in the world? And how is the church responding? How should the church respond? We will look into these things in today's study. So we go to Revelation chapter 13, hold fast. And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. So this is the context of Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 13. These are signs in heavenly places or descriptions from the language of heaven about events going on in earth. So and then from the beginning of time, Satan's warfare against God and God's creation is also described. So if you want to know what time will this happen, you have to apply the principle of prophecy. The first incident, Satan revolting against God, the first incident in Mount Zion, in chapter 14 of Isaiah. Then he's following it through in Ezekiel chapter 28. In the Garden of Eden, you remember verse 14, he was the anointed cherub who walked amongst the firestones of the garden. And then each stage he had warfare. Now when we come to understand Revelation 13, we find at each stage in different centuries, in different kingdoms and empires, Satan raised up a political dictator or political power. Satan raised up a religious power. So the first beast, the political power. Second beast, the religious power. Thirdly, an economic power or economic kingdom. So when in Ezekiel 28, Ezekiel is made to see the king of Tyre. Ezekiel sees how king of Tyre is behaving according to a prototype of Antichrist, the political power, the religious power, and the economic power working together. So and then the dragon, the Antichrist, and false prophet working together. And in the end of time, there will be a climax of these personages working together. In between, in history also, we could find periods of time when an Antichrist-like figure, for instance like Hitler, almost took the world. But saints arose in battle and defeated. So in the end time also, when these powers are aligning for the one last time, saints of the end time may have the most ferocious war at hand, with family disrupted, sexual identity disrupted. In many nations, the global powers, the global plan is trying to get hold of every nation and trying to have their head of state who's anti-national rather than working for the nation. All this is now aligned for the end-time drama that will move nations to Armageddon and against the church and against Israel. But who will win? The Lord Jesus Christ is the captain of the host. Lord Jesus Christ is the commander. And we are his people. Christ will win the battle through his saints. So Revelation chapter 13. Here is the scenario. Dragon stood on the sand of the seashore among the people, looking to whom he may anoint as the political figure who will take absolute authority. Even when an election is going on in a country, the same dragon watches to see whom he may anoint or place in that position. Then the church has to arise and take authority into their hands and anoint the seat of governance so that only what God will mandate will happen in their nation. So saints, stop criticizing politicians. You do your work of laying hands on the seats of authority, especially on the seat of governance of the head of state, and choose the person in prayer whom God would have there. Having chosen the person in prayer, continue to work with him in prayer. And of course, those who are in the legislature will Christians going into the legislature, Christians going into the executive, Christians going into the judiciary, professional services, wherever places you occupy the mountain seat, the seat of influence, the sphere God has given you. Because we know there's a dragon who's scouring the seas of nations and he's choosing his champion. But you can be God's champion. Then I saw a beast coming out of the sea, having 10 horns, 7 heads. On his horns were 10 diadems, on his heads were blasphemous names. So if we apply the end-time interpretation to this, it means now a very visible kingdom of Antichrist with 10 kings or 10 nations or 10 heads of states aligning with him is now forming. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, and his throne and great authority. To understand the description of these animal forms, you need to go to the book of Daniel, chapter 8, which describes Nebuchadnezzar as the head of an image in chapter 2 of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar was the head of the image in chapter 2 of Daniel. Chapter 2 of Daniel has an image with the head being gold and the chest being silver and belly and the thighs being bronze and the leg being iron and the feet and toes being iron and clay. So different kinds of kingdom. And so the interpretation was the head gold was Babylon, the chest silver was Medo-Persian, and the belly and the thighs were Greek, the Greek Empire under Alexander, and then the leg was the Roman Empire, and then the feet and the toes made an empire of iron and clay, which was supposed to be the extension of the Roman Empire or the last kingdom or last anti-God empire of Antichrist, arising out of the nation's geographical area of the former Roman Empire. That is why the European Union is in focus, possibly as the Western power from whom Antichrist may arise. Now remember, this is only the possibility. Then we go back to Daniel chapter 8, in which the Greek Empire is described as a goat, and it's divided into a Greek Empire described as a goat, and in another expression, the Greek Empire is described as a leopard because of the swiftness, the speed with which Alexander conquered his terrain. So when we come to Revelation chapter 13, this last empire of Antichrist will have the swiftness of a leopard, tenacity of the bear. The Medo-Persian Empire was compared to the bear. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon was compared to the lion. Medo-Persian Empire was compared to the bear. And the Greek Empire was compared to the leopard. Now all these features are now coming together in this last evil empire. I saw one of his heads as it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. So the prediction is this person is rising to power, and a certain incident will cause him to have almost a fatal wound, and when he comes back healed from that, whole world will go after him saying, great miracle, great miracle. They worship the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast saying, who is like the beast, who is able to wage war with him. So there's going to be a power, a person, whom 2 Thessalonians 2 says the son of perdition, whom 2 Thessalonians 2 says will be revealed only after the church is taken up. And here is a description of what he will do once he grasped power. Then was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months. So for 42 months, 3.5 years, 1260 days, he seems to be having complete authority on a certain area of government. Now, whether the whole world will be ruled by him, whether every country will be forced to take his number, we are yet to see. But the period of his domain or authority is only 3.5 years. Verse 6, he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is those who dwell in heaven. So, this person, is there a head of state now blaspheming God and taking power more and more into their hands? Is there a head of state or a system of government, system of legislative power that is defying the dictats of God, family, sex determination and so on? Watch that system. That system would be the one that becomes the system of Antichrist. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority over every tribe, people and tongue and nation was given to him. Now it says make war with the saints and to overcome them. There are two ways being overcome. Either through compromise, you go with the Antichrist, or else you resist and you die for Christ. In the sense, physically he overcame you, but you remain faithful to Christ. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. So only those will worship him. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword, he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and the faith of the saints. So the faith of the saints will be greatly tried during this period of 42 months. Now, if you are wondering how can we identify the person of Antichrist, we still have no details how to identify the person of Antichrist. I have already told you that during the time of the Armageddon war and nations being preparing, in Daniel chapter 11 verse 32 onwards, where this war is described, there is distinctly, you can recognize the kings of the east coming, king of the north coming, and some federation called the king of the south, and there is another person called the prince, people of the prince who is to come. Daniel 9:26 also used this term, people of the prince who is to come, the prince who is to come. That's the way Daniel identified Antichrist. That person's geographical location is not mentioned, but after king of the north goes, king of the south goes, kings of the east are named, only kings of the west remain as a geographical area or direction. This is why we watch European Union closely. This is not conclusive, but this is the way Daniel chapter 11 describes the entire arrangement of political federations. Now we will leave the next description for the next time, which would be the description from Revelation 14:11 onwards about the false prophet, false religious system that will back up Antichrist. So hold on, next time, the false prophet and the false religious system that's going to back up Antichrist. God bless you.